today we will be focused on the practical side, like how to do a migration from setup to the result that you can verify. And let's get started. Okay, so today we will walk through one complete migration flow. The goal is not to just like see a task marked as completed. It is to know what the data is correct and ready for the next step. We'll cover this journey in five simple steps. The first one is we will confirm what data can be migrated natively, and we will choose the right way to extract the data. The third one is we will prepare the environment, install the tool, and start a new task. We can like configure the mapping and see what is the progress during the migration task. And then we can validate the result and prepare for the production. I will keep the background shot and we can continue like with the migration scope. So here's a quick magic that for Jira, the migration covers much more than only issues and projects. It includes more like users, groups, issue types, fields, workflows, datasets, comments, attachment, and so on. And another important question is not only whether an item can be moved, we also need to like confirm how it should appear and it behave in once. For example, like we have some customer they might using some plugins in Jira that we need to identify and assess where the data need to be migrated and how we can migrate all this data. We need to also have we need to define the clear rule like the user identities, the field mappings, the workflow permission, and also like some of the post functions. And Confluence have a similar challenge. So for Confluence, the main scope includes the spaces, the page hierarchy, the permissions, image and attachments, and the annotations. So standard pages and attachment can usually be migrated directly, and the macros and some of the custom plugins may need more attention. As some of you might know, once provide some building macros, for example, the UML diagram, the mind map, and also provides the Figma prototype that is natively in once. And some of them might be the add-ons in Confluence. However, as there are some various plugins that might not have the parity features in once, so we may need to assess further and see how we can bring those data into one's project and one's wiki. So that's why the sample validation is especially important for the conference content. And once the scope is clear, we can like plan and the delivery process. And this is a overview about how we handle every migration case from end to end. A reliable migration is not only a single import task, it is a controlled delivery process. We typically help our customers to assess the data volume, to define the scope and make a tailored plan, then start a POC with some typical project sets and the spaces sets, and then validate the results. After the POC, if we move further, we will plan for a Jira with all four data migrating to the test environment. This is the key gate before we proceed to the production. We will like migrate all of the data and evaluate and validate all the data sets that work perfectly in one's platform, and only the Jira passes we plan for the real migration. Okay, so now that we understand the scope and the process, we can now look at how the data is extracted. Because we see some tools using APIs for migrations, which may work for a small migration case, but it also has some clear limits. It can be slow, it can be like affected by the rate limits, and unable to access some of the history configurations or the plugin data. It is useful, especially for some small updates and maybe the incremental synchronization, but I think they should never be the main extraction method. That's why we choose the backup package and the database approach. For a large enterprise migration, we normally use this approach. This gives us like broader data coverage and better performance. We can visualize all the progress. We can make sure the data completeness, and no matter what source we use, the tool follows the same basic processing flow. So here is the process flow. It has four parts. First, it will extract the source data from a backup package or directly from the database. And then it will transform the data into the once data module. We can review and confirm the mapping rules during the migration process. And then finally, the tool will load the data into once, and we can verify the result in the once platform directly. So the key point is that the entire process is visible and you can control. We can like review the rules before start the actual migration into the target one system. And before we start the actual demo, let's quickly check the environment requirements. So typically, this should be done before the first migration run, and we recommend to take a backup of once every time you try to start a new migration task. We recommend once on premises 7.20 version or later, which it provides the capabilities of the resume migration and incremental sync. That is our new features for the migration tools. And the second one is that you need to prepare enough cache space. At least 20 gigabyte is recommended. And you also need to make sure you have enough CPU and memory available during the migration. And also like the network access and the permission is some key points to check, including, for example, the database or the backup access, and also the attachment directory. So most setup problems comes from maybe missing the permissions, unavailable files, or insufficient resources. So it's better to check before creating the first migration task. Yeah, so during the process, we can see that we have one task and we have multiple decisions to make. That we keep the source information from the Jira, and we can pick the migration scope. We can configure the mapping rules for the issue types, for the fields, and also for the users. And we can see the entire progress. We can see the logs. Also from the migration reports, there are also the migration logs as well. And for the report, you can see what is the amounts for the data objects to be migrated. You can use it to validate what is the effect of the migration. And depending on the migration plan, this can be maybe a backup package or a database connection to do the migration. So after the migration, we have three types of evidence that help you to prove the result. The first is the migrated data. We can see the data in the once platform directly to check the actual results. And we can see the detail logs. If there is any like warning or there is any failure, we can capture them and see like what happened during each step. And the migration report that I just showed, it just like summarize the migrated amounts, mapping what is skipped and what is the failures. So together, these results make the migration traceable and easier to review. Okay, so a completed migration task is not only it is only the beginning. I think the most important is to validate and how we can go live. We use four types of evidence for sign off, as we just mentioned. The counts, where the counts are matched between Jira and one's platform. But just a quick note that there are some design differences that, for example, for the release, it is a kind of issue types in one's platform. So there will be that they will be migrated as a new issue types, and the release will be kind of issues. So the amount for the release may be different, and you can also like check the comments, the attachments, and also for the Confluence, you can check the pages as well between the source and the target platform. And the second one is the mapping. We can confirm that the users are migrated, the fields are migrated, the issue types are there in the new platform. So you can see everything will map correctly. All right, so there are some exceptions that may not be migrated natively, but typically we can have access before the go live state to see whether there are some critical data that need to be migrated. Maybe based on the once open platform that maybe in another webinar I will introduce we can build some plugins to have some parity features in once, and we can like build and also migrate those data into the once platform. So this makes the sign off based on the evidence, and it's not only based on the task status. All right, so as I just mentioned, we have the incremental sync. It may like change, it will make sync the new or change data. For example, some issues get updated after the main migration. We can like use the feature to sync those updated into the one's platform as well. They can include the issues, the comments, attachments, work logs, links, watches, and so on, and also like the status change. It is useful during the POC or maybe a pilot project or a parallel evaluation. But please know that there are some important rules. The first one is that it only syncs the business status. For example, a newly created issues, a updated issues, it will not sync the configurations. So any changes to the workflows or the layout will like need separate handling. So it is mainly to keep the source of the business status. And the second one is that Jira is the source of truth during this incremental sync period. So the sync is one way from Jira to one's platform. If there are any changes made in once, it will be overwritten. So this is mainly for some like freeze rollout and maybe for a pilot project that some of the business user they still need to do their work in the Jira platform. But for the production cutover, we suggest keeping the final sync window short and schedule it during a off-peak hours. Okay, so moving from a demo to production is it's normally includes three steps. The first is the Jira that I just said before. So we need to confirm the scope, the mapping, and the duration and the validation process. We will prepare a like test environment, and we can migrate the whole data set to that environment and do the validation so that we can know how long it takes for a full migration and what is if there are any edge cases that we can fix during this process as well. So after the dry run passes, we can plan for the production migration. And we can use the incremental sync if the source system must remain active. It is for some scenarios that maybe some of the users they must stay in the Jira platform. And finally, for the cutover, we can perform the cutover during an agreed change window. So it is typically like after the dry run passes, we can have a off-peak window to do the production migration, and we can do the validation. Once team will help with our customer to during the entire process. And a successful cutover must be controlled, measurable, and reversible. Yeah. So I think that is pretty much for today's demo. And we follow one migration from the startup to the sign off. I think it is not that difficult, right? We can like easily install the tool in the on the Jira server. We can start a fresh new task, and it is only just like you can configure the mapping and click next to see all the data into the one's platform. Yeah, so it is mainly to review the scope and select what data should be migrated, what is the mapping rules, and you can just validate the results. The main takeaway is simple also, like a migration is not complete when the tool stops running. The task is successful, but it is only completed when the result have been checked and approved. Yeah, so thanks for joining us, and please feel free to let us know if you have any questions.